much focused on looking forward into the future, to get a glimpse of the opportunities that are going to exist for farmers over the next decade in Irish agriculture. And also we wanted today to be about embracing change and challenging farmers, industry and policymakers to embrace that change, and most importantly, to think smart. So the theme of this year's conference is innovation and disruption, and how it is changing the agri sector. The pace of change is ever increasing, and as we all know, what once seemed like a distant challenge on the horizon comes into sharp focus much quicker nowadays. Things like climate change, global trade deals, protecting reputation, product branding, environmental sustainability and social licenses are just some of the issues that crop up on a daily basis in relation to the agricultural industry. And these disruptors, while maybe in the past would have seen as a nuisance that can be put in the corner and kept quiet, we now as an industry need to embrace that and stand up and say, hang on, we're going to take this head on and see the opportunities in it. Because change does bring opportunity, and Irish agriculture must anticipate and adapt to those ever changes. So this afternoon we have a diverse range of speakers and facilitators, everything from farmers to researchers, politicians, business leaders and media. And most importantly, we've got you, the audience, here as well today. So it's really, I suppose, it's a melting pot of ideas of the stakeholders of the agri and food industry. And I think that we all here today have one thing in common, which is we have skin in the game. Because this is our industry, it's our livelihoods, and it's our future. And I want you all here today to embrace this opportunity, to think to the future, look at the opportunities and discuss them and have a vision for the future. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you here this afternoon to the President of Macra and Fermoy, Mr. Thomas Duffy.
Thank you very much, Niall. Before I begin, I want to recognise all the incredible work that's been put in here before any of us could sit in this room or stand to speak. The Rally Committee has done an absolutely incredible job in organising this conference in collaboration with the Ag Affairs Committee and with our staff, very importantly, in a support role. Organising any event can be incredibly complicated, but also trying to encapsulate a national event on a local level can always be a difficult challenge. But the amazing work of everybody together has led us to where we are today with an incredible line of speakers and an incredible topic here today. In the last 2 weeks, I've attended many events on rural business, on renewable energy, and most importantly on the area of the future of agri-food. The Department of Agriculture hosted a roundtable forum for us to speak and to give contributions. And many of our distinguished guests here today, from Jim Wolfe of Dairy Gold to the Minister himself, will be aware of the challenges that we face as a sector going forward. We are coming under increasing criticism, increasing scrutiny from many different sectors. We cannot hide from these things. But we can live up to our reputation and the tradition in Irish agriculture of constantly innovating. When the Ag Affairs Committee and the Rally were discussing the topic and how to move forward, the idea of disruption came up, because often disruption is deemed as something which is negative to the agricultural sector. In the open policy debate, there was discussion about lab-grown meat being ready by 2021, and this being a potential threat to the entire of our beef sector. We have trade deals and increasing political uncertainty to thank for all of many of the challenges that we have seen in more recent times in both beef and now on the dairy and tillage sectors. However, disruption does not have to be a negative force to young people, because young people are in a position where we are not the status quo. We hope to be the future for this entire sector. To do so, we need to embrace disruption. From our technical panel on farm here today, where we will hear from the likes of Duffy and others who are working in the genetics area to try and change drastically and improve our sectors, to more futuristic outlooks from some of our contributors from WIT, to those who are already embracing new technology to reach the consumer, like Tom Pemberton, who we've invited here today. These areas are a broad approach to disruption in the entire sector, but they are important in each way because there will be no silver bullets. As Niall laid out, the challenges are many, from climate change to public perception to matters of trade. We have to constantly be adapting and constantly be willing to uptake on this new information, this new technology. I will comment that Macra, as a policy forming organisation and as a major lobbying, the third largest lobbying organisation, is constantly pushing for renewal and futuristic solutions to technology challenges which are coming now but also in 20 years' time. We need to look what our members are going to be facing, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but when they become established farmers in their own rights. To do so, we have laid out a set of policies, challenging positions to the Department of Agriculture and to the various other stakeholders in the sector. From the challenges of sex sealing, which we are pushing as a major component to a solution, potentially longer term for the current crisis that we're seeing on the cards for the dairy calf, to embracing the department's and the multi-department plan for climate change, and very heavily pushing Chaggis's roadmap for the Macra curve, so that we can face these challenges and face these claims that agriculture is a contributor to climate change, and to embrace that. But we will only do so with generational renewal. And that is ultimately what Macra is always been about, ensuring young people can get into the sector to use this technology. Because if we do not have it, this technology will not be updated, it will not be adopted, and the entire sector will stagnate. Thank you very much for listening to me here today. I hope you all enjoy the conference here today. I now invite the Minister to speak, and again, give him thanks for being here today, as all of our other solutions.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, CEO, Chairperson, CEO of Marts, and distinguished guests, all ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin my address, I want to say that I'm truly delighted to have the opportunity to attend your national conference. And I suppose to acknowledge that in many ways I consider myself a product of Macra and Fermoy. Some years ago I was involved in Macra in Rome, and I've always considered it, outside of the party political realm, to be the organisation that has, enormous positive potential and a track record of delivery in terms of the betterment of rural communities, the farming sector, and society generally. And it's quite amazing the number of people who are formerly on Macra and Fermoy who have made tremendous contributions to the agri-food sector in many different guises. And I'm particularly pleased to acknowledge my own background in that regard. I'm also really appreciative of the invitation to be here at your conference and to acknowledge the engagement which I've had ongoing with your president and indeed with your previous president, James Healy. Always a voice challenging the status quo, in itself a disruptor of the norm, and that's as it should be, because once we think we have arrived as an industry, we're on the back foot. We constantly need to be challenged, and I think that's what Macra and Fermoy does very, very well, and I'm particularly pleased to work with the organisation, with your president and with previous presidents as well. Today's agri-food sector encompasses many different elements, from farming, fishing and forestry through to processing, sales, distribution, marketing, as well as innovative research and development and advanced food sciences with close linkages to sophisticated agri-engineering and digital technology sectors. It continues to be this country's most important indigenous industry and plays a vital role in our economy. At a macro level, the industry has seen growth in export value of some 73% over the last 10 years to reach a record 13.7 billion euros worth in 2018. This is 10% of Irish merchandise exports, and for a small island nation in the western seaboard of Europe, that's no mean achievement. The sector also makes a very significant contribution to employment. 173,000 people in total between inside the farm gate and outside the farm gate, representing about 7.7% of total employment. But if you take outside of the Greater Dublin region, this rises to between 10% and 14%, confirming its disproportionate significance in rural communities in particular. Given all of this, I want to state very clearly that the government is committed to furthering the development of the agri-food sector, and in particular to encouraging and supporting you, the next generation of young farmers. Chief among our commitments to the sector is negotiating a reform of the Common Agricultural Policy that ensures Irish agriculture can continue to produce high quality, safe, nutritious food while protecting and enhancing the environment, and that it has the financial support to do so. I want to assure you that the government will continue to prioritise the maintenance of a strong CAP budget, and as I have previously stated, we are prepared to contribute more to the overall EU budget if it is spent on things that contribute to the advancement of the European ideal, including the CAP. As you're aware, we are in the midst of those negotiations now about the future of the Common Agricultural Policy. And it has to be agreed by unanimity across all member states, and there are proposals on the table from the former Agriculture Commissioner, Phil Hogan, and those proposals represent a cut in the CAP budget for the period post-2020. Some commentary from some member states is that those proposals don't cut enough of the CAP budget. We do acknowledge that Europe faces, different and significant challenges, and we hear of them every day now, increasingly even in Ireland, in terms of the migration challenge, the security issues. And we do acknowledge and accept as a government that those challenges have to be funded, but we do not agree that it is appropriate to rob the funding from the CAP to meet new challenges. New challenges need new money, and we are prepared to pay in more money into the European Union budget to see the projects and programmes that are of importance to us to be adequately funded. We do that as a member state that is a net contributor to the European Union. For many years, particularly in the early years of our membership of the European Union, we were very significant net beneficiaries in terms of flows of financial support from the European Union to Ireland under various guises, including the Common Agricultural Policy, regional development funds, Interreg, peace programme funding, etc. We now get the overwhelming majority of the funds that we get from the European Union through the Common Agricultural Policy. But we make the commitment that we are prepared to pay more as a government into funding the European Union, acknowledging that the European Union has new demands that were probably unforeseen in previous negotiations of its budget. And we make that commitment from the point of view of being a significant net contributor to the European Union, and indeed one of the highest contributors per capita into the European Union funding. And I don't underestimate in any way the significance of that challenge, because very significant countries, the Dutch, the Danes, the Swedes, the Austrians, have made it very clear that they are not prepared to pay more, and in fact they wish to see the budget reduced. And given the requirement for unanimity, that's a very, very significant and challenging space to be in. Our commitment is, we believe, in line with the priorities of the incoming European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, who has stated that the CAP must be ambitious in terms of food security and environmental and climate objectives, and that CAP strategic plans should pay particular attention to the benchmarks and requirements on environment and climate-related objectives. That I take as a clear political statement from the President of the Commission that we cannot be asking farmers to do more and more and more in terms of the environmental obligations that we have to face up to for less and less and less payments. Important as the CAP is, the series of 10-year strategies that the agri-food sector has developed, working with government and my department over the last 20 years, has also been crucial to the development of the sector. While the 5 cross-cutting themes of the current Foodwise 2025, which are environmental sustainability, human capital, competitiveness, market development and innovation, are likely to remain relevant in the next strategy, there are a few areas that require enhanced focus, I believe. In my view, environmental sustainability, and particularly the contribution that agriculture and forestry can make to climate action, must be a priority in any successor to Foodwise 2025. Sustainable food production is essential as global population increases, and Ireland can play a significant role in meeting that demand for more food. But it is also true that agriculture accounts for a quarter of the world's CO2 emissions, and in Ireland for 1/3 of our emissions. So we must also work hard to reduce this environmental impact. The extent of the challenge is clearly understood by government, and this is why we launched Ireland's first all-of-government climate action plan earlier this year, which sets clear and targeted pathways for decarbonisation across our economy and society, and presents a step change in our approach to reducing emissions. You will be aware by now that the plan has set challenging and ambitious targets for the agricultural sector in terms of emission reductions and carbon sequestration. The sector can also contribute to the displacement of fossil fuels. These climate action plan targets are defined for the period 2021 to 2030, and therefore will align with the new agri-food strategy to 2030. At the stakeholder consultation, which was referenced by your President last week at the Aviva Stadium, to kickstart the development of the new strategy, I encouraged the attendees to be very cognizant of the commitments laid down in the climate action plan relating to our agricultural sector. I asked them to consider how they can and indeed must be integrated into the strategic vision while maximising the value added for the Irish economy, for food business and for society, farmers and indeed fishermen. One of the objectives of this exercise must be to reconcile our climate change obligations with our ambition for the development of a vibrant and thriving agri-food sector. Nobody has ever said that this would be easy, but in Ireland we are starting, I believe, from an enviable position with an industry that has a strong and well-deserved reputation for product excellence and environmental sustainability. Agriculture has a vital role to play in the new and evolving areas of endeavour such as the bioeconomy. A new technological revolution is also taking place with the development of innovations promising to substantially change the way we grow and distribute food. These include using satellite data to monitor crop growth, combining sensors, automated farm machinery and advanced analytics software to fine-tune and automate agricultural production, using digital technology to connect farmers in new ways, and experimenting with blockchain technology and other innovative data management systems to improve the efficiency and transparency of the agri-food value chains. It is also, I believe, increasingly clear that the agri-food sector needs to be sensitive to developing societal norms and consumer expectations. For example, our response to the climate change and environmental challenges I've already mentioned, or how we care for our livestock, will be significant factors in shaping future consumer demand. And we need to have a deep understanding of what motivates consumers, when they eat, what their tastes are, and the impact lifestyle, demographics, and health have on patterns of consumption. I am firmly of the belief that with an open, adaptive, and innovative approach, a better understanding of these factors can also offer many opportunities to the sector. Young farmers will be central to embracing this challenge and adapting farming methods to take advantage of the opportunities that arise. I know Macra and Fermoy is up to that challenge of demonstrating the leadership needed to take on these challenges and steer the agricultural sector in the direction that is needed for future sustainability. Sustainability environmentally, socially and economically. The government is very firmly supportive of young farmers, recognising your vitally important contribution to the future of Irish agriculture. My department has a range of measures to support young farmers and generational renewal, both under the CAP and nationally. The National Reserve and the Young Farmers Scheme provide financial support to young farmers and new entrants to farming during the crucial early years, immediately following the setting up of a farm enterprise. Between 2015 and 2018, some 8,500 young farmers have received payments under the Young Farmers schemes each year. Over 78 million has issued to successful applicants under the scheme during this time. Over 9,500 applications have been received under the scheme in 2019. Also between 2015 and 2018, almost 8,000 successful applicants have benefited from the National Reserve, with new allocations of payment entitlements valued in excess of 30 million made to successful applicants during this time. A further 780 applications have been received under this scheme in 2019. Under the TAM's Young Farmer Capital Investment Scheme, young farmers can avail of enhanced grant up to 60% as compared to the standard 40% rate. Under this scheme, 74.5 million has been paid to over 2,700 young farmers to date. There are also a number of national taxation measures aimed at young farmers, specifically the 100% stop relief on income tax for certain young trade farmers and stamp duty exemption on transfers of land to young trade farmers. Both of these measures assist farm succession and transfer. Other measures, such as the relief from income tax for long-term leasing, also benefit young farmers by increasing land mobility. In addition, in 2017, I launched the Succession Farm Partnership Scheme. This provides for a €25,000 tax credit over 5 years to further assist with the transfer of farms within a partnership structure, promoting and supporting the earlier intergenerational transfer of family farms. This scheme also encourages important conversations within farm families regarding succession planning. TACR's recent publication, TACR's Education Vision, Meeting Future Needs, outlines the importance of education for young farmers and the development of their skills through education and training. This core function of TACR's is supported and funded by the department. Earlier this year, I launched the Future Growth Loan Scheme, which is a long-awaited source of finance for young and new entrant farmers, especially the cohort that do not currently have high levels of security. That was an issue that I think Macra and Fermoy in particular have continuously lobbied for in terms of access to finance, following on as a logical ask from greater land mobility, which has been facilitated also. Supporting young farmers and generational renewal continues to be a priority for my department and will form an important part of the CAP post-2020. My department and I are actively engaging with other member states and the European Union on these issues during the current negotiations, and I will welcome your contribution to the debate as the consultation process continues. I now want to turn briefly to the issue at the forefront of all our minds at present, the departure of the United Kingdom from the European Union. As you know, the European Union Task Force and the UK government agreed a final text of a withdrawal agreement, which is subsequently endorsed unanimously by the European Council. The withdrawal agreement includes a new Northern Ireland Protocol, which allows for a more permanent set of arrangements to address the challenges of Brexit on this island. Northern Ireland will remain in the United Kingdom's customs territory, but continue to apply the rules of the European Union Customs Code. It ensures enhanced democratic support for the specific arrangements for Northern Ireland and provides for negotiations to begin on an ambitious and balanced free trade agreement between the European Union and the United Kingdom. Elements from the previous withdrawal agreement related to North-South cooperation, the protection of citizens' rights, the common travel area, and sector-specific issues remain intact. The withdrawal agreement must now be ratified by both the European Parliament and the British Parliament. The House of Commons voted on an amendment that calls for the implementing legislation to be dealt with first, and therefore the United Kingdom has asked the European Union for an extension to the October 31st deadline. Until the withdrawal agreement is fully ratified, the risk of a no-deal Brexit remains, though diminished. We are continuing to make plans for such a scenario, severe and all as that is. In the budget, the government announced a no-deal Brexit package, which is designed to assist the most vulnerable sectors. 110 million will be made available initially from a fund of 650 million for the agri-food, tourism and enterprise sectors. A first tranche of 110 million euros will be made available to the agri-food sector, and specifically targeted at the beef sector, where we believe the immediate hit will be felt in terms of, in particular, finishers, should our neighbours fall out of the European Union without a deal. While supports cannot fully address the negative effects of a no-deal for the agri-food and fisheries sector, this first tranche of support will be used to ameliorate the immediate impact on farmers and fishermen as the full impact of a no-deal crystallises. And the advantage of a tranche approach to the funding is, given the fact that there is no precedent against which we can measure what a crash out from the European Union looks like, we can evaluate as it develops what a no-deal Brexit and the implications are on various sectors, and respond accordingly with the additional funds from that budget package of 1.2 billion euros, 650 million of which is available immediately to the agri-food and fisheries sector, tourism and enterprise sectors. It is crucially important in the context of the current market difficulties in the beef sector that the beef sector task force agreement is implemented, and the task force is given the opportunity to provide the leadership to develop a sustainable pathway for the future of the beef sector in terms of economic, environmental and social sustainability. It is in the interest of everyone involved in the beef industry that the work of the task force goes ahead unimpeded, and I trust that Macra and Fermoy will continue to engage proactively and constructively with the independent chairman, Michael Dowling, in that context. And I would in particular like to acknowledge the very positive and constructive role that Macra and your president played and the Macra team played in the context of what were very difficult negotiations along with other farmer organisations over the summer months, but particularly in September in Ag House and in Back Western, when it was a time for cool heads and constructive engagement. I think Macra was a shining light in the context of those negotiations. We have, in the context of the beef sector, of course, also in the budget, provided, on top of 45 million which is available under the BDGP scheme, an additional 40 million euros for the beef sector. And we will be engaging and looking for submissions from farmer organisations, including Macra and Fermoy, as to how we might use that fund to build on, for example, the experience we had out of the Beef Environmental Efficiency Programme, payments for which are commencing this week. That was a pilot programme that we had last year. But also perhaps looking at what are the other challenges that we need to face up to. And I think the President alluded to the dairy calf issue, which is a real and current issue in the department, and how we might use that fund to address that, including in the broader context of other welfare issues as well. So we will be looking for submissions from farm organisations in that regard in the coming days. In conclusion, I want to reiterate that great progress has been made in developing the agri-food sector during the period of the current food-wise strategy. Notwithstanding the obvious challenges for the sector, great potential exists. For example, in emerging markets, where over 75% of global economic growth is occurring, or in the rapidly developing bioeconomy area, where we are finding new uses for waste streams and other products for the agri-food, or other products from the agri-food industry, or in the rapidly evolving digital and disruptive technologies which are arriving onto more and more farms and food businesses. There are many reasons to be positive, including even this week, where the audits from the recent Chinese visit were given the green light, and all beef plants, meat processing plants that had applied for access to export to the Chinese markets have been approved. And I think that's a very significant development, because in the context of the beef sector, we are in a mature market in the European Union looking at consumption that is flatlining. But there is a very significant opportunity for us, I think, in the Asian market generally and in the Chinese market in particular. An opportunity that is enhanced by virtue of the difficulties that they're having with African swine fever. We're aware that presently in the pork sector here, they're witnessing a very welcome financial boost because of the consequences for others of African swine fever. And if you look at various data from the Chinese market, up to 40% of the pig population there may need to be stocked out. So that's giving rise to very significant opportunities for us in the pork sector, but there's also the likely possibility that it will spill over into other protein sources as well. Hence, the approval of the beef plants that were audited recently, and I'll be meeting with senior Chinese officials next week to discuss, in fact, the possibility of access for sheep meat also in the Chinese market. So, confluence of circumstances, are contriving to look favourably on opportunities for significant protein exports from here, particularly in the beef area in the short term. And I think in 2019, albeit from a low start, we could be looking at a tenfold increase in the volume of exports that we will put into the Chinese market, with only 6 or 7 plants approved. And I think the significance for 2020 will be greatly enhanced by that. On top of the fact that there is also growing middle classes, higher disposable income, etc. in those regions of the world that can drive production for us. So I think there is reason to be optimistic. I appreciate that there's always kind of challenges in the agri-food area. This year continues to be a very difficult one for the beef sector. There are reasons, as I said, to be optimistic in terms of future developments there, in terms of market access elsewhere. But I'm delighted to have been invited, Mr. President, to address your conference. I wish you every success over the weekend and look forward to continued engagement with Macra and Fermoy over the time ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. And I just want to reiterate the organisation's appreciation for having such a high-profile guest alongside other honoured guests here today, and also for having such a great turnout, because this is a change to our normal running, as people will be well aware. However, without further ado, I'm going to invite our MC for the rest of the event. John Keane is our Affairs Chairperson, and well established here from John. If you want to come up, and we'll get straight into the plans. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Thomas. I'd like to welcome you all here to Corrin Marts. Just reiterate what Niall said earlier on, the team of today is where the exits are in case of an emergency, so I'll do my flight attendant job. One either side, two at the back as well, so just in case anything goes wrong, hopefully it doesn't. So next up, we will have Breda O'Keefe, who is Chair of Avondhu Macra, who will just give us a brief bit of what Avondhu Macra is all about and what you can expect for the rest of the weekend.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to keep this, as a wise person once told me, like a mini skirt. Long enough to cover the essentials, but short enough to keep your attention. For those of you that don't know me, as John said, my name is Breda O'Keefe and I'm in the fortunate position to be Chairperson of Avondhu Macra. Avondhu Macra is one of the largest regions in the country with over 450 members, spreading across from the west coast, or the west border in Kerry to the east border in Tipperary and Waterford. I'm going to give you a drive-by rundown of the weekend and what lies in store for the rally. So tonight we are kicking off with the Irish Farmers Journal Know Your Ag quiz in the Radisson Blue Hotel, followed by music by Hell for Leather, a great band, and then the traffic light night. So what it means is green if you're single, amber if you're a bit iffy, and red, don't go there. So come along, wear what you like and stick your up if you want to. Tomorrow morning then we'll have the tours, so there are 4 tours. There's the dairy tour going to Mike Dunn's, a beef tour going to Glen South Farm, and the contractor tour is going to Tom Barry and Mike Cooney. Then the alternative tour is going to Middleton Distillery, which I'm sure somebody will be delighted to hear. Then following on from that, back at the hotel, the Club of the Year Finals and Best Member are taking place in the lobby. You are more than welcome and encouraged to come along and see what fantastic work the clubs and members have put in. After that, Saturday night, there will be the announcements of the winners of Club of the Year and Best Member, and followed by music by Rula Bula. Then on Sunday, there will be chair yoga in the hotel for people who need a little bit of a movement break. And here in Corrin, there will be beef and sheep sausage finals. In the hotel tomorrow, Sunday evening, then we will have the 75th anniversary of Macra's banquet. So please join us for what I'm sure will be a night of reminiscing and going back over fond memories with lovely food, and followed by music by the Ian Hendrick Band. And the Breda DJs are also there all 3 nights. Thank you to anyone who gave money to Shri Ella into the buckets at the doors. Shri Ella is a charity that's in the Avondhu region and close to a lot of members' hearts, and one that should be supported. At the break, at the ice cream break, at the break, there will be buckets going around as well, so please donate if you can. Finally, I would like to thank everyone who made this day and conference and rally possible, and especially special thanks to Jim for your money. Without whom this weekend would not be possible. So a huge thank you to Dairy Gold and Co-op Superstores, and with that I'll hand you back to John. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're enjoying the ice cream. It's sensible here in his life as well. Lovely day for ice cream. My name is Damien O'Reilly. I work in RT Radio, but I'm there anyway some of the days. So you don't work as hard as you guys. And I was just thinking on my way down here to conduct this interview with MEP Billy Kelleher, who will speak to you presently. I was thinking that in 25 years, before some of you were born, visiting farms all over the country, maybe to some of your own farms, or indeed the farms of your parents. And it's interesting that in that time, going back to the early 1990s, that the more things change, the more they stay the same. The narrative is the very same. That is, of course, that farmers, and those of you here that grew up on a farm, which I presume is virtually all of you, are certainly close to it, know that farmers are price takers and not price makers. And in that time, of course, we've seen attitudes towards food change. We're all after cheap food now, which is a real shame, and it's not talked about enough when people complain about agriculture. The attitude that consumers have towards food as compared to other commodities. And yet in that time, regulation has tightened exponentially. Go back to the early 90s and see how farms were inspected then and how they're inspected now. But in that time, the one word which is synonymous with Irish farmers is resilience. And I know it's a word that a lot of farmers probably hate. Why should we have to be resilient? Why can't we just get a decent living for what we do like everybody else? But that is farming for you. And for the Dutch farmers here, they probably would nod in agreement. It's the same in their country, the same all over Europe. But in my travels around the country, in that time, hundreds of farms I've visited, always got very welcome. And I just come across top-class farmers. That's not promoting. We do have top-class farmers in this country, despite all of the challenges. And now the next generation, which is you, are even better equipped to deal with the issues ahead, because a lot of you will have travelled abroad. A lot of you, of course, will have had to study now to get in order to get your green cert. So you're going in now to a business better equipped than your parents before you. You're going in as business people. But there are challenges. And I certainly, in that 2 decades going around the country, arguably, I don't think there has been a tougher challenge or list of challenges on the horizon than there is now for farmers, for you guys and your fellow family members that are farming.
We don't nearly have to go through all of this: climate change, Brexit, Mercosur, weather. These are all big, big challenges. But instead of, I suppose, focusing on all the doom and gloom, which you don't want to hear about, of course there are huge challenges. We all need food, and we all need locally produced, safe, traceable, wholesome food. And where do we get it? From Irish farmers. So there is an enormous role for Irish agriculture, as we know, into the future. We do know that if we are to meet climate change targets in this country overall, it's not necessarily, us with the keep cups up in Dublin that are going to make the big change. It is, of course, going to be the custodians of the countryside, the farmers, that are going to be at the forefront of that. And so instead of, I suppose, slagging off farmers, people should actually be looking at them and encouraging agriculture and farmers to try and lead us out of this, and I'm sure you actually will. But of course, what you need weather, you need good incomes, you need encouragement, and of course, you need proper legislation and proper leadership at political level. And we get some of that here, but farming, more than most other industries in the country, or most other jobs or occupations that we have, is dictated by what happens at European, at global level, but particularly at European level. So we look to our MEPs and we look to the DG Agri for guidance, and we will be looking a lot closer to Brussels over the next few years for some guidance as to how we can continue to farm the land in an economically, socially and environmentally sustainable way. The environment does not have a monopoly on the word sustainability, as we know. You have to be able to, obviously, to meet climate change demands, you have to be able to do so while making a living at the same time. So I think this relatively short session, it's a pity we don't have more of the MEPs here, for various reasons. The bank holiday weekend, the fact that the Parliament was in Strasbourg this week, means some of them couldn't be here. But we are delighted that somebody close, a neighbour's child, is here. Billy Kelleher is himself, grew up on a farm in Glanmire. His brother's well known to you as well as a little milk producer. Billy's a former member of Macra, and he told me, he says, and I'm still a farmer. But he is now newly elected MEP for Ireland South, over there at the coal face, in the eye, I suppose, of the legislation that affects all of you here. So, Billy, I'd like to just, first of all, welcome you, and if you want to just say a few short words of introduction, and we'll have a little chat then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I know you've had a long day, and we'll try and get to questions quickly. I'll just introduce myself. My name is Billy Kelleher. I'm a newly elected MEP for Ireland South. And as David said, I grew up on a farm in Glanmire in County Cork, and before I was an MEP, I was previously a TD. And I suppose before I got elected to the Dáil, I was effectively a dairy farmer. I went to Pallaskerry Agricultural College for a year for Green Star purposes, and then spent 6 months in Holland, or now the Netherlands, on a dairy farm. And I'm 51 years of age, and the reason I say that, I'm probably the generation that saw the shift, the fundamental shift in thinking and policy development from just production to where we are now in terms of biodiversity, environmental sustainability, and all that flows from that. We talk about the Breda Valley project, for example. When I was a young man, it was bulldozers in fields taking ditches out. It was about production. And that was because of the concept coming from policymakers who had come through and were probably just born after the Second World War, who would have vividly remembered food shortages on the continent itself, who would have experienced that. So for many years, the thinking around the European project was peace and prosperity, and in the prosperity part of it was primarily about food production, making sure there was enough food in Europe to feed its people. Of course, we've moved a long way from that. We saw the introduction of milk quotas in 1984. They were only recently abolished in 2015 after 31 years. So there's been quite a transformation just in the context of the thinking around agricultural policy development. And we're now in a very challenging time. It will open up opportunities, but there's no doubt there's challenges. The environment has become mainstream in its thinking. In other words, every policy development across all aspects of industry, agriculture, transport, they will be first and foremost environmentally approved from now on. So every decision that we made at policy level in the European Union and nationally, one of the first ports of call will be to assess the impact it will have on the environment. I would suggest even in some cases the impact it will have on the environment in advance of even doing an actual costing of the projects and the impact it will have in broader society. And if it doesn't pass the environmental standard, regardless of what else it may change and fundamentally benefit, if it doesn't benefit the environment, it will not be considered. That is the thinking in Europe. And the reason I say that is because, number one, science has shown and proven that there is climate change, evident, it is happening before us, and if we don't do something globally and play our own part nationally and as individuals, well, that will have a major impact on generations to come. So the challenge is there for us. So what do we do about that? We have to change how we live, how we work, how we commute, what we eat, how we eat it, and how we farm it. And that's going to be the challenge for yourselves as young farmers and people involved in the agri-food industry itself. And the European Union will have a major say in what can and will be done in the years ahead in terms of farming. So you're going to see a huge emphasis on biodiversity. You're going to see a stronger shift on produce being produced closer to home. And of course, when you say that, then the next logical question is, why are we doing trade deals with Brazil's of this world, the Argentinas, the Uruguays, and across the globe? And that is something that the European Union is going to have to address in a meaningful way. If we are to have global trade, then we must have sustainable global trade. And even the Mercosur agreement itself, which hasn't been ratified by Parliament or any member states in the European Union, is a case in point, probably the first time where we will now look at the impact that trade will have on the environment. Not only the environment in which we live in, but in the environment from where those produce will be produced as well. So it is going to be, over the next number of years, a very unsettling time, I think, in the context of finding markets for product and making sure that what comes into the European Union is not undermining our efforts to make sure that we have sustainable, economic, environmentally friendly farming. And that, I think, is going to be a big, big challenge. Damien referenced about consumers. And of course, the further you get from rural life to urbanisation of a population, well then politically, farming drops down the scale of political importance. And that's going to be another challenge for farmers as well. So across the European Union, the voice of farmers is diminishing in the context of its influence on the ballot box, its influence on who governs them. So you're going to see more and more policies orientated towards urban life, and that puts huge pressure and diminishes the capacity of rural voices to be heard at policy level. And that's where farm organisations and young organisations like Marts and Fermoy come into being, that they will have to advocate in a very powerful way that resonates with others that are not from rural Ireland or rural France or rural Germany. And that is evident in the Parliament of Europe at the moment. You see policies being pursued by political parties that would be considered just maybe centre-left, talking about the abolition of CAP, about unwinding CAP in its entirety. This is mainstream talking and conversations at policy level. So there is a move afoot to try and shift payments from agriculture in its entirety towards the environment. Now, if that's to be the case, well, then we have to make sure that the agricultural aspect and the impact that agriculture has on the environment moves with it as well. So in other words, that farmers become the custodians, as they are, of the environment. So not just agricultural production, but of the environment as well. And that we continue to transition those payments to ensure that there is sustainability if you're farming in an environmentally friendly way. Just a few more references as well. We talk about price, consumers' demand for environmentally friendly food produced in a sustainable way. Of course, the next question is, if the farmer isn't paid a price that gives them at least a reasonable return on their effort and their investment, well then how will they farm sustainably, and how will they invest in the capital costs that will be required to ensure that they can sustain or farm sustainably in an environmentally friendly manner. And again, that is going to be a big challenge. So, I mean, we would be suggesting that there needs to be more price transparency. In other words, that it is clearly evident from production right through to consumption and the food chain and the delivery chain in between that to the consumer, that we know where prices are, what prices are being paid and where profit is being taken. And I believe that that is a critically important part to ensure that farmers, while they are price takers, at least the evidence will be shown beyond doubt that they are getting extra product and the consumers paying why, and in between profits have been taken out by various actors in the delivery process. So from production to transportation, right through packaging and everything else to the consumer itself. And I think that's a key area that needs a lot of policy development, and they're talking about it a lot in Europe, but it just seems to be slow in bringing forward a policy that is fully transparent, price transparency right through the system. I believe that will at least give farmers and food producers the opportunity to advocate for a fair price if it's shown that they simply cannot produce food at the price they're getting. You saw recently, as I said, in recent times, outside meat factories across Ireland, frustration, anger, fear that they could no longer farm at the prices they're getting. And that can't be just the continual way that agriculture and the industry and people who want to pass on the farm or who are starting farming and making that as a career, that they have to consistently worry and have to agitate for a fair price for their investment and their effort. So there will be a couple of areas. Just finally, the uncertainty around Brexit is having a profound impact on markets, both financial, and that implicates itself right into the farming sector as well. There's huge uncertainty out there. Nobody knows where sterling is eventually going to land in terms of its relationship with the euro. You see the trade war between the US and the European Union. You could see further escalations of that in the short and medium term as the US presidency goes into its electoral cycle, where President Trump will be advocating tariffs to show that he's supporting his own industry and agriculture and food sectors back home in the States. So there's huge uncertainty. But the biggest issue facing us at the moment in terms of concern for the short and medium term is the whole issue of Brexit. Where does sterling land? What kind of relationship will we have with the UK? Will our product be competitive in the UK market? Bearing in mind they will be a third country, and particularly if they crash out, it will be very much a third country without having any trade agreements in place. Going to World Trade Organization, tariffs would have a devastating impact on agriculture. But with all of that, there's also the need for us to accept that the population projection growth across the globe is quite significant. There's 1.1 billion people living on the African continent as we speak. And by 2035, there will be 2 billion people. And by the end of the century, there will be over 4 billion people living on the continent of Africa alone. And that will bring with it, obviously, huge challenges in the context of migration and all that flows from that. And equally to bring huge challenges from the European Union to ensure that countries have the capacity themselves to invest to not only in production but in education, making themselves politically sustainable, promoting democracy, but also beyond that there will be significant opportunities because of trade and the interaction with that. So I mean that is something that is going to be confronting me as young farmers and just young people in general in the years ahead. That new relationship with a continent that has grown exponentially in the last number of years, both economically and will also increase dramatically in population as well. So it's going to be a very new relationship we have with our nearest continent from that perspective. They're just things for talk, but they're things that are being very much discussed at European level, some maybe a little beyond the horizon, but on the immediate issue facing you in policy terms is the interaction of agriculture and the environment and how that will impact on me, and then more broadly how it will impact on Ireland in general, how we live, how we work and how we socialise. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Billy, thank you very much for that. We are behind time, I appreciate that. So if you do have questions, we will come to you. Just let us know, and we will take a couple of questions. But I just want to tease out, I suppose, first of all, you're very welcome, and you're settling into big school all right, I presume. But you're only there a wet week. You touched on it there about the coloration, as it were, of the Parliament, and that is reflective, I suppose, of consumers, obviously across Europe, who elect these people there. How worried would you be if you were a farmer when you look at the colouring, if I can put it like that, the makeup of the Parliament and their priorities when it comes to budgets? Agriculture used to account for over 70% of the EU budget. It's now at 35 and dwindling further. Is that going to continue?
I believe so. Hello? Yeah, I believe so. We have two challenges. We have the immediate challenge about convergence within the island of Ireland or within the Republic at the moment in the context of foreign payments. We also have the issue of convergence between the old countries of the European Union, Western Europe effectively, and the countries that joined more recently in terms of convergence around cap payments as well. There are two big issues. So we'll have our own internal debate, but equally across the European Union is that broader debate about bringing full equality and price convergence. Then beyond that, there is no doubt that the common agricultural policy, as has been developed and where it has landed now, is under huge threat. And it's under threat primarily for two reasons. Number one, people see it as a threat to the environment. This continual view that you are paying people to produce something that may not necessarily need anymore or could be produced elsewhere. So you have that train of thought. There's quite a strong, just market-oriented political view in Europe that the market will resolve all these issues, the free market thinking. And then beyond that, the political landscape has changed fundamentally. And it's not just a green agenda, in the context of most recent times. We saw in Ireland the Green Party's environmental groupings doing quite well politically. But that has been happening in Europe for some time, and it's going to continue, and the urbanisation as well of the populations. So when that happens, the farming voice in parliaments across Europe will significantly diminish, and has already significantly diminished in the European Parliament.
Yeah, and of course we know the British contribution to the pot is going to disappear. We know that migration, security, and indeed climate change are issues that cost money, that weren't around maybe 20 years ago. They were at a more minimal level. So that is the trend. And then when you see that pot of money, which farmers here depend so much on to keep their head above water, when you see that pot dwindling, are we also going to see a situation where environmental measures will be linked to Pillar 1? In other words, at the moment, a lot of farmers obviously have the option of reps or whatever it's called now. But do you see an awful lot of those environmental regulations and legislation at European level now, your payment becoming determined on adhering to new layers of environmental and biosecurity demands?
Yeah, I do, Damien. There is no doubt that's already policy thinking. It's just a case of how they actually bring it about in a practical sense that...
Because it will be demanded by the Parliament, isn't that? As a result of the Lisbon
Well,
Treaty,
yes,
you need to rubber stamp it at Parliament level before it actually can sign off.
It's demanded by the public and by the need to address how we live on the planet. So it's proven beyond doubt that we have global warming. It's proven beyond doubt why we have global warming, and they are severe emitters of gases, greenhouse gases, and CO2s that impact on that. Transport being one, but agriculture is a major emitter as well. And it's not always nice to talk about it because it can just sap people's energy and confidence in the industry, but it needs to be addressed. And for example, even in Ireland now, you will see very much in the next number of years probably a rollout of a lot of anaerobic digestion, for example, where slurry, farm waste, food waste, and all these things will become very much part and parcel of our energy generating makeup. And that's happening across lots of countries, but you will certainly see that as an issue very much coming to the fore. So farmers will be making a living on a number of ways. Commercially, obviously, selling product, equally support through maybe an amalgam of pillar 1 and pillar 2, and then selling product that would up to now be seen as either slurry, as a form of fertilizer, but more probably and more than likely as an energy source for the broader economy.
Can I talk to you about the other big issue which made the agenda this year, Mercosur? And it's amazing actually the anger and the reaction to that. What's your feeling out there? Phil Hogan has said in the meantime, oh no, look, you know, there are going to be very strict guidelines there. If they're broken, if lines are crossed, the deal is off. Now, what's your feeling out there? Is that Phil Hogan talking to the hometown team saying that? Or what is the feeling in Brussels? Is that deal done, and is more important that we get goods and services sold to Mercosur than the issue of beef?
Well, I don't know what's being done, but there certainly is concern about the impact that the trade deal could have on increasing demand for product from Brazil, whereby they actually have to, you know, tear down more rainforest, plough up more ground to produce soya, to import into Europe, produce more grass to feed.
But is Europe willing, are the people Europe out there, are they willing to turn a blind eye to that if they're going to get from these other countries? Take Ireland out of it, and obviously our dependence on beef and our worries about it, take us out of it. Is that same sense there and concern among other MEPs and in Europe?
There's a lot of concern about it. Which is the one issue that I was quite surprised actually generated debate beyond, you know, MEPs that would have large agricultural areas in their constituency. There was as many urban-based MEPs from Germany and elsewhere that were, you know, very concerned about Mercosur, not because of the impact it would have on the price of beef in Cork or Kerry or West Clare, but on the impact it would have on the global environment. And that was their concern. And they were very powerful and forceful in that. So, I mean, is Mercosur done? It must be ratified by the European Parliament, and it must be ratified by other parliaments as well. So, you know, there's a lot of work to be done on that yet, and a number of years. There was huge anger, but what was interesting in it was there was actually 1 kilogram of beef came from Brazil or Uruguay under the Mercosur trade agreement because it hasn't been ratified. But it was coming at a time beef prices were very low. There was low morale. Farmers have been after a very difficult time. They've come through financial crisis like everybody else. Lack of credit, access to capital, all these things, and just seeing whether or not there's a future in farming. And that's, you know, that really does diminish just confidence, and it came at that time. But, you know, farming is, it was mentioned, you're resilient people, and I'll say that because you're sitting in front of me. You know, it has gone through very difficult periods historically, agriculture in Ireland has, because it has always been very much a commodity supplier, a global price taker. In more recent years, we've added value to it in terms of developing an excellent agri-food sector, but that in itself also is facing huge challenges now as well. So the next thing is to find out what markets want and how we can sustainably deliver it to those markets.
Just one final question for the moment, then we go to the floor. Once you become a commissioner, you don't, you know, Phil Hogan has said, I'm the EU commissioner now, I'm not the Irish commissioner anymore, and so goes for the other 26 or 27 or whatever it will be. But yet people say that, isn't it great that Phil Hogan has got this big job, it'll be good for Ireland. Does it work like that?
Well, I mean, look, there's an obligation, you know. I'm an MEP from Northern Cork, so I mean, if somebody from Clare has a problem with it, you should deal with it as equally, so it's the same principle. But, I mean, at the same time, where we are in terms of trade, he's going to be the new Commissioner for Trade. I think we're very lucky that he's been appointed to that position, primarily because our biggest trade deal in the near future will be done with the UK. And that will have a profound impact, potentially, on the island of Ireland itself, around the border, freedom of movement of goods and services. So having somebody that has at least first-hand knowledge of what trade barriers could cause on the island of Ireland is, in my view, advantageous to us. But I mean, the negotiations will be still done on what's in the best interest of Europe, but equally what's good for Ireland. You know, so far they've shown solidarity with us around the whole Brexit issue, which actually has amazed me, to be truthful. I was surprised that there was such strong support for Ireland around Brexit, in terms of the Good Friday Agreement, the peace process, the impact that a hard border would have on the United Ireland, both socially, economically, and commercially, and just in terms of underpinning the all-Ireland economy. So there's been a strong political support, and if we have an agreement with the UK, then the next step will be a trade agreement, and that's when I think Commissioner Hogan, as a trade commissioner, will be very advantageous to us.
Okay, have you any questions? Yes. Just to introduce yourself for the benefit of everybody else and put your question to you.
To me, which is from Macra. Do you feel the cheap food policy in Europe is going to change? CAP was originally introduced 30 years ago to produce cheap food. CAP now is aimed at environmental issues, and the cheap food seems to be coming through Marts or places like that. Whereas, like, households 30 years ago was spending somewhere north of 20% on food, now it's less than 10. Do you see Europe changing that, or do you see in the next 10, 15 years it will be below 5% what the household will be spending on food, and farmers won't be making a living from producing beef or milk? They'll be making a living purely on environmental issues.
So it's an unintended consequence of the Common Agricultural Policy.
Yeah, I think that in general there'll be no change to policy that will actually force food prices up. So you're going to effectively have the market taker in the broad sense, but then you would expect that there will have to be policies underpinned with financial supports to transition farmers from where they are in terms of production and the environment to where we have to get to. If there's no transition payments, if there's no change or softening of with price supports to that position, well then farmers just won't be able to do it. Farmers will not be able to invest in the capital costs that will be required to transition to a more sustainable farming. Like, for example, I was just speaking with Gas Networks Ireland this morning. Across Europe this is happening all the time now. But I mean, communal digesters, farmers investing in methane collection, conversions, all of those things are happening across Europe. We're in absolute infancy in Ireland on these progressions. Transitioning our heavy goods vehicles to gas, to other friendly fuels. All of these things will are going to directly support farmers and other industrial areas with soft payments, or is it going to be through trying to drive price up? I do not believe, Europe, the way it's made up, that they will be able to drive food prices up to fund that. I just don't see that as politically sustainable.
Okay, just on that, has the EU failed in its obligation to communicate properly to its citizens the actual role of the Common Agricultural Policy in keeping prices affordable for us? They're as beneficial to the consumer as they are to the farmer. These MEPs that you were talking with in corridors out there saying, oh, get rid of the cap altogether, we should spend that money elsewhere, are they willing to pay more, as vis-a-vis that question, for their produce? Do they understand its entire role?
Well, I think what has fundamentally changed in the last number of years, but only history lessons on it is just very evident, is that by and large there's no difficulties in producing enough food to feed us in England. Okay? So that concept and worry that we may run out of food or have a food shortage has
It's a post-war policy too.
Yes, but it has lost any influence in policy decision making. Probably up until the 70s, early 80s it was there, but it has really unwound itself from any policy making decisions. Have we the capacity to feed our population?
But it's a three-pronged policy. It's about cheap food, it's about keeping farmers on the land, but also maintaining rural communities. I mean, that message is not obviously getting out there to consumers who want to get rid of CAP.
Well, it's not in terms of have we accepted now that rural Ireland is more than just about farming. If you want to sustain the communities, you have to viable farming. But equally, you don't expect farmers to live in areas that are socially desolate. So there has to be a vibrancy around that as well. Farmers need neighbours, they need to have communities where their children can go to precious schools and all of these things. So that's the next big step, I think, in terms of rural Ireland and rural Europe, because it's not just an Irish issue. Go to parts of France, Spain, other countries where they've big population dispersed areas and in the big cities. The big cities are dominated politically. The voice in Northern Ireland has been lost politically, but at the same time, that we have to get them to accept that if we keep going as we are, rural Ireland will socially degrade, depopulate, and you have farming then very much just struggling just to maintain its very existence.
Yeah, no, I mean, the problems that Irish farmers have, it's commonplace across Europe, the age profile, lower depopulation, low prices, regulation, all of that. Anybody else? The microphone here, yeah. I mean, one over here. Okay, so one up there, one here. Go ahead.
Sorry, Conor Bannon from Macra. There's not much talk about the environment today, so we're on the Green Card COP. But you've mentioned our proposal a lot already, but is it not a bit of a double standard you're asking? Ireland and Europe have to produce some of the best quality food products in the world. Then you're saying, if we get a good deal, yeah, come on over with a load of beef. And in 10 or 15 years, Brazil still will not have got to the Irish quality or the European quality that we can produce beef at. And their environmental standards, there is no environmental standards in Brazil. So to turn around and say to farmers, you have to produce the best in the world, but we're still going to bring in a couple hundred tons of beef every year from Brazil. Is it not a double standard? Is it not quite an insult here to farmers?
Well, you see, the thing about Mercosur is that it's just more than about beef. I mean, there's other countries that are producing beef that have no concerns about beef coming in from Brazil. It's a very big economy. It's about 190 million people. It is growing exponentially. It's a lot of raw materials, natural wealth. So Brazil itself, will be a big consumer market. So the Germans will be looking at it in terms of cars, aeroplane parts, high-spec engineering. France and Belgium will be looking at it from the point of view of exporting chemicals. And that's, so it's to try and get a deal. And bear in mind, as the European Union is negotiating on our behalf on trade deals, that takes into account the impact that a very small section of the deal will have, but will have a very big impact in Ireland. And that's your difficulty.
So it is fair to say that beef was sacrificed at the altar in Mercosur by the EU.
Well,
beef farmers.
If you're a Brazilian politician or a Brazilian negotiator, they have a lot of beef, and they want to find markets first. So they are going to insist that in the context of any trade agreement, there has to be a quid pro quo, there has to be benefits from the Brazilian point.
I know that, but then we should insist that they produce it on the same level as we do.
I think we should insist that they produce it at the same level and probably beyond, bearing in mind it has to be transported across the Atlantic Ocean, and it will have, no matter what it will encourage the further deforestation of Brazil and the other countries that are signed up to it. That is a fact. Now, we have asked for there to be a full independent assessment of what impact it will have in terms of deforestation and the broader impact of the environment. The entire trade deal, not just the beef element of it, but the entire trade deal should be independently assessed. Not by the European Union or by anybody in Brazil, but people independent that can just look at it purely with a John's eye and see what it will deliver and what it won't.
Maybe the IPCC could do that job. They have a lot to say. We another.
Maybe we talked there that there is going to be independent rules into the deforestation of others, but I suppose the real picture is that they're not talking on the outside. Is the European Union not concerned about the climate change and the environment defects that are talking on the outside is going to have on a global scale? Was that not taken at all about?
Well, I suppose the preliminary questions that we've asked of the European Commission around Mercosur and the impact that it will have is they have said very clearly that Brazil will have to satisfy the Paris Agreement as well. In other words, that food produced that's going to be imported into the European Union cannot be produced in a way that has been having a profoundly negative impact on the environment. Of course, Brazil, as I said, is a very big economy. Other countries want to get in there as well. China is, really involved in establishing trade negotiations with Brazil, a lot of African countries as well that are growing exponentially as well. So there's, I suppose, a lot of pressure on the trading blocks around the world to try and get it first to lock that down. And that's what's happening. I mean, China effectively is buying parts of Africa, is buying parts of South America, is doing phenomenal sort of investment politically, militarily, and commercially as well across mid-Africa and particularly South America as well. So, but you're right, anything that encourages a country to impact negatively on its environment should not be supported. But the next question that will have to be asked is, the rainforest belongs to Brazil, but it impacts on all our lives. So are we willing, because the Brazilians will say, well, we're entitled to exploit our raw material, our natural resources, just like you did for hundreds of years. Will we be willing to not only encourage them not to cut it down, but to compensate them for not cutting it down? And even that particular issue is being raised in Europe. In other words, that countries like that would get relief through carbon tradings, etc., for not cutting down forests.
Okay, I'm going to leave with a final question, just back to Brexit. What about the British Brexit Party MEPs? Are they causing any disruption? And what do you see actually happening? Do you see another referendum? What's the mood music? Just, I suppose everyone has a different opinion, but from where you are in Brussels, what is the feeling? An extension will be granted, it'll be probably till January 31st, that will be decided next week. What do you see actually happening? And as I said, what's the behaviour like of the Brexit Party MEPs since they were elected?
Well, I suppose the first thing is just this continuous uncertainty is not going to be is not helpful. So I mean, at some stage it's going to have to be brought to an end. You hope it's brought to an end with a deal that then can transition to a trade deal, so there's minimal disruption. Boris Johnson's obvious play is to try and have an election on Brexit.
And say to everyone, here's the deal, I have it,
well,
go
yes,
for me.
Look, I mean, traditionally you had two parties in the UK politics. You had the Tories and you had Labour and the Lib Dems in a very small way having some bit of an impact. Boris Johnson knows that if Brexit is the big issue and he seems to be the ones that are taking the UK out of the European Union, that he'll win the next election. It's as simple as that, and the polls will show that as well to be the case. So what he wants to do is have an election on Brexit, and he being the person that will diminish the Brexit party in national politics. Whether that will actually happen or not is the difficulty, and I suppose without boring people to death on politics, but you know, Labour are at 6 and 7, so you don't have a binary choice. It's not either that Labour are fully in favour of staying in the European Union, they're unsure of what they want themselves, they're changing their mind on a regular basis. But Boris is more defined in his view, I want to get out, and if you want out, you must back me. So what's going to happen? He needs to get the mandate or permission of Parliament to actually have the election. That's the difficulty. So he needs the Parliament to actually dissolve itself. But just, I think I would prefer to leave, I prefer if it was a referendum. The difficulty, of course, is that the longer uncertainty continues, the more impact it has on investment, on price, on structuring of where we are in terms of contracts for export of foods and industrial products.
Yeah. Well, as somebody said, the longer it goes on, the more, it's a very crude way to put it, the more older people that voted to leave will die, and the more younger people that have turned 18 who want to stay will come in and swing and it's happened already. There's about 1 million people that have died that voted to leave, and 1 million people that will remain have become 18.
If nobody changed their view other than the fact that older people have died, if you work up the percentages, well then, if there was an election or a referendum tomorrow morning, Remain will carry it about 53-47 based on the percentage of young people coming in and older people going out.
There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're a wee bit over time, but I was going to say Commissioner, MEP Billy Kelleher, thank you very much indeed for joining us. You don't have too far to head home now from the weekend, and thanks very much. The very best of luck in your new position. I'd like now to welcome to the stage some Macra aristocracy. The great Matt O'Keefe is going to take you home, as it were, from here on. So thank you very much for your attention and for your questions, ladies and gentlemen. And Matt, it's over to you.